like for different people. I don't know why that recording just made me nervous. I was like, let me watch what I say. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it. I definitely enjoyed the last session. It's great. So,
Good. Which
yeah.
session were you in again?
The navigating, which one?
Okay, navigating
Yeah.
challenges and understanding
Yes.
a phenomenal
Yeah.
will.
Yes. That was awesome.
Such an important, like, and needed conversation, right?
It was definitely. I mean, I could even, relate, you know, um, with a lot of the things they were saying. And like she said, it you know it happens to everybody, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know who might be going through the same thing and could kind of add to help you through or cope, or you know what have you. So um I thought it was very informative, and it was just real, so and I
Yeah,
think that's
general.
important. That's
Yeah.
important, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You felt it, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. Like anyone can kind of relate to that. Okay. I want to Deja Monet, Intel Media Group, Takia Monique. You handle community partnerships. Let me get your title correct. I do not want to butcher that. Community Partnership Manager, Cherry Blossom Fest.
I'm updating my little thing. So
Perfect. Let me get mine together now that I'm in this room. I'm still missing. There she is. Hi, Nisha. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Lawanda?
I'm good. Birthday twin. It's good to see you.
As I was getting on the call, I was like, can't wait to see my birthday twin.
Birthday. That's so special. Look, I know 23 is going to be our year. Okay. It's already been our year, but I'm claiming year 23.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the way. I'm just going to actually run and get some water, guys. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah.
yeah, let me grab water too. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. We are missing. Can you grab Sonia, please?
Okay, it's 7:15.
We're still missing one speaker. I'm getting Darren to grab her. Hey, Leah, how are you?
Hi, Lawanda. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Okay, glad you could make it. All right, so we are just on time. Great, ladies. All right, so welcome, everyone. This is the last and final session of our CommGenius conference. I'm so excited to be here with you guys and and really tackle this conversation. This is breaking into the 24-hour media cycle. The media is constantly changing. So how do publicists break through the news cycle and persuade an audience to share an interest in their client's point of view? The discussion highlights the publicists who have successfully earned placements in top media outlets. So I want to start this conversation off by asking you guys, tell me about when you first fell in love with comm. What was that moment? What was that experience like for you? And how did you get to this place?
Did you want to start with anyone in particular, Lawanda?
And no, ma'am, you can just jump right in.
Well, I'll jump in.
Not everybody at once. We do love what we do here, right? I'm hoping I'm in the right room. Yes.
Yes, we love communications.
Yeah.
We love our industry and all the professionals who are involved and as well as talent and those on the other side and artists, etc. My name is Aaliyah Crawford, and I am Senior Vice President at W&W Public Relations. And I always had a strong interest in entertainment and the communications field from the time I was a child and the arts. And I didn't intend to be a publicist. I always intended to be an entrepreneur of some sort and also a filmmaker. And I studied film and media arts at Temple University, where I graduated from. And I first, really started working in the radio industry then, and also the film and television industries, and worked at Temple's radio station, which was a, well-known and loved jazz station at the time, WRTI. And so I really got my, feet wet at that point in the communications field. And Temple really has a renowned communications program. And after college, I worked in a variety of positions, internships and freelance positions in film and TV. And I had the fortune of being introduced to W&W, where I still am to this day, and a wonderful publicist by the name of Patty Webster, who was, very monumental in the PR industry and in the entertainment industry, and very influential as well. And I got an opportunity to be an assistant there. And that's how I was first introduced to PR professionally. I had taken some PR courses as electives, but I really fell in love with PR then. And, it has been good to me, and I think I've been good to it. And I think just what made me fall in love with PR and communications is the power that the industry really has, the influence, and to do good and to actually create narratives and help people build their brands, to help companies and organizations build their brands, and to relate with their customers, to relate with their clients, to relate with their fan bases. And it's really about, to me, I always say PR is the long game. And, I'm going to use it, in the same ways we would use communications overall for the sake of this conversation, that it is about telling your narrative in your own words, to your target audience. And it's a long game because it's for the life of your brand. It's not just, when you first come on the scene or have a breakthrough, or when you first, launch a new product or release your first music. Is really about thinking about telling your story, telling your brand story throughout. And that's what I love about PR. And you always have a chance to continue to tell your own story, to continue to reintroduce yourself, and to also rebrand or reimagine yourself, and that's the power of PR and your communication strategy, is that you can always do that, to, highlight your brand, to showcase your brand, to elevate your brand.
I love that. And I'm just going to hop back in because I realized I jumped right into the conversation, didn't properly introduce everyone. So let me just go back for a second. And thank you for introducing yourself, Leah. And we have Deja Monet. She's the co-CEO of Intel Media Group. And Misha Green, she's a features and content editor at the Baltimore Sun. And Takia Dickens, who's the community partnerships manager for the National Cherry Blossoms Festival. So Misha, go right ahead and answer the question if you like.
Yes. First of all, Lawanda, thank you so much for having me and all of us today. I'm just like loving the Black girl magic that I'm feeling. So I just have to shout that out real quick. But yeah, so my introduction into has been really, really interesting. What I'll say is I ran from it for a number of years before I admitted that I was in love with it. I come from a theater background and I went to a school for the arts for middle school, high school, and majored in theater in college. And so when I was in college at Fordham University, I was required to take core classes, and some of them sort of dabbled into communications. And at the time, my professor said, "Oh, Misha, you should really consider double majoring." And I should rewind. My dad really wanted me to be a communications major. He was like, "You're a great actress and I love your passion, but like, let's try to do something a little bit more stable. And you'd have a career that would be a little bit more solid, I think, in communications." And he thought at the time broadcast journalism. I had gotten a couple of gigs in high school and college where I was like reading from a teleprompter. And so I was thinking, that's sort of, I think, a backup plan to what I wanted to do in theater at the time. Long story short, I took enough communications classes that I thought, well, maybe I should just do a minor. And that was sort of the beginning of my slow crawl into what has become a major love for storytelling, for communications in general. One of my first classes I remember that just sort of intrigued me about what we do and what sort of humans do in general is that out of the millions and billions of people on this world and millions of people we interact with in a lifetime, communication is so incredibly key because we don't have conversations with all of those people. We don't make eye contact with all of those people. We don't have significant and meaningful moments with those people. And so successful communications is something that we need to celebrate in many ways. And I thought that that was so intriguing, and people study psychology, people study sociology, anthropology. And I, at that moment, understood comm itself as something to study and really dig deep into and sink my teeth into. And so I found all facets of it quite interesting. And when I fell into journalism and ended up getting my master's from University of Maryland in broadcast journalism, it was really difficult for me to sort of pick the world of communications I wanted to go into. But what I love about what I do now as a content editor is that I get the opportunity every single day to interact and work with publicists and sort of collaborate with people on how to tell stories. Who is out there that the people need to know about? What are these narratives that are so incredibly important? And so it is just a joy every day. It's something new every day. And I absolutely love it. I know we'll get to talk about many different parts, but that is how I began a lifelong, as Aaliyah talked about, love affair with comm.
Awesome. I love that. Deja, did you want to tackle it, or Takia?
Yeah, I'll go. Hello, everyone. So my name is Deja Monet. And so similar to the ladies that went before me, I fell in love with comms in college. So I went to an HBCU in Atlanta called Clark Atlanta University, and really just getting that hands-on experience I leverage alumni in my my major. There would be like a ton of alumni mass media arts events for the department. And so one of the very first internships that I did was actually with a woman at a record label, so Atlantic Records, where I pretty much like created like an internship opportunity for myself. And so I would pretty much support her with when talent would come on the record label would like promote their different initiatives or music, I would be of support to her. So really like learning on the ground from like, you know, grabbing balloons to, you know, managing like the checkpoint and making sure that, you know, the right people are coming in and making sure people have what they need. So that's when I fell in love with it. And I moved since then, have moved on from doing music, but that was like exciting to me. Of course, like, you know, when you're in college and you're kind of like working on like celebrity type things, your friends are like, oh, well, let me go with you to this. And so it kind of also gave me some popularity in that regard too. But I just felt like a fire inside, and I was willing to, at that point, just, you know, create opportunities for myself, because I wasn't a PR major. I wanted to be a PR major, but I didn't want to graduate late. So I actually studied broadcast, so TV, radio, film. And so I made opportunities for myself. And that's how I knew that was something that I wanted to continue to do and pursue, because it just like, I was willing to chase that goal like by any means possible. So that's when I fell in love with communications.
Nice. Have a similar start.
So my first encounter with comms is a little different. So I went to North Carolina NC State University, and for me, I wanted to know every aspect of comms, meaning I wanted to know the business side. I wanted to know in front of TV. I wanted to know behind the TV, so behind the camera. So it was, for me, it was just, I want to know everything. And at ANC, they had this program called media management. And that was what I majored in. So within that program, it gave me a taste of every position that communications can offer. I took this PR class and I took this radio broadcasting class. It was there where it clicked for me, where it was like, you know what? You know, communications is great, but I want to know the business aspect of it, of how do people make money off this? Mm-hmm. So that is where my relationship with comms kind of like blew up. It also grew where I was an intern for Factory PR, and I also interned at Vogue magazine. That's where I fell in love with fashion PR, and I loved the pace of everything. I left PR in 2012 because I wanted to. I was introduced to a different side of communications, which was getting branding, which was giving like sponsorship, endorsement, that sort of thing, and it allowed me to continue to do pitching, and then it also allowed me to do a tad of PR, because when doing, and a tad of branding, because when connecting with different companies and different brands and connecting them with clients such as influencers or anyone that want to go into getting endorsement deals and stuff like that, you kind of need to know not only, you know, the media side of things, but you need to know the business side of things as well, of how to close that deal and what will look good from a visual standpoint, and again, helping the publicist on how to pitch a particular story, on creating a story on whatever the brand is trying to pitch or whatever campaign you're trying to pitch. So my direction to communications was not only wanting to know every aspect of the industry, but definitely wanting to know the money behind it. Like, how is where's the money coming from? So that's how I was connected to the whole industry as a whole.
I love that. I think that's a really great segue too, to talk about, you know, as publicists, we look to people like what Takia does, right? To really help elevate our clients, elevate our work, and to build a more positive reputation behind that. And of course, create an additional stream of revenue. So how can publicists align with sponsors in a meaningful way? What is it that you look for as someone that does this work that says yes or no? What does that look like for you?
So I always, anytime publicists come to me and say, hey, I have a client and they're interested in being endorsed by a particular brand, my biggest thing is, what's the story? Because just like the publicist has to pitch to the media, I have to pitch to brands, and I have to basically sell your client on what's the beauty behind it, what's the reason, what is this client going to do for my client? And it has to go beyond social media, right? It has to be, what have they done in the press? What are they doing in the community? Nowadays, brands want to know, what are people doing in the community and how are they connecting with the community on any level? It could be a national level or it could be a local level. I always ask, what have they done for people, period, lately? And when I say that, going beyond community a little bit, but what have they done within their industry? What have they done for things that's not in the media so much? And what have they done from a social standpoint, even on social media? What are they doing to be consistent? Brands will give, if you got 500 followers, brands will give you $5,000 if you're being consistent and if your audience is engaged, if it's engaged on social media or if it's engaged in the media or if it's engaged within your community. They're looking for consistency, engagement, and they always say this to me, what have they done for me lately? So a lot of people will pick these brands, but the question is, like, do you even buy this brand? Have you tried out this brand? And it could be a brand and or service, right? So it doesn't have to be, because a lot of people think small, like, give me Coca-Cola. Okay. So your role, right? And I know a lot of publicists that you guys know, they be like, I want to be featured in Essence. Okay. So your role, right? Like, is your story worthy enough for Essence, right? Like, what have you done for me lately? So anytime someone is looking to get endorsed by sponsors or needing sponsorships for something, it's a lot of things that need to be broken down before we even go at it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I want to hop over to Misha now, because you're coming from someone who works right at the Baltimore Sun. I know I personally pitched to you when you were working at the Afro, and she's got my story, got me to the right person, got my stories placed. So thank you, Misha, for that. But as a journalist, right, what type of stories do you look for that you decide this is something I could definitely pitch? You know, this is something that definitely will work for my audience. What are the stories? And is that personally aligned? Is that aligned with who you are personally, right? And how do you choose also which media outlets that you want to work with and work for? So what does that look like for you? And how has your experience been over time?
Thank you for that question. I first have to say, for me, it's so important before joining an organization that I'm looking at how people are receiving the information that that organization is putting out. You know, our readers and our viewers and those taking in our media is so incredibly important. And so before I go to an organization, I want to know the impact that I have. And so in the same way, I think about that in the stories that I want to tell and what I want these people to receive and understand. And of course, we're always working with something that's fact-based, right? And so in doing that, when I'm working with publicists, one of the things, going back to Kia's point, what is the impact? What have you done for me lately? I love that, because I think it really does speak to how we're able to shape a story without looking like we're endorsing a particular client of yours, or saying this certain thing is something that, for example, with the Afro or the Baltimore Sun, that we necessarily align with, or that myself as a reporter and editor align with. Often I do. Particularly, I loved working for the Black press and that responsibility, because I did it because the work excited me, and the work of the people and working with the publicists and you all's excitement about your clients really made me want to tell those stories. But I think it really boils down to the impact and what a client, what a particular organization is doing for the people, and how will these stories continue to impact the people. Obviously, I think readers, I'll start with this. I think readers want an action item when they finish a story. And that might just be to Google more about that individual or that organization. Or it might be to participate in the next initiative with that individual organization, or to start donating. But giving readers sort of why I read this because it impacted me somehow, whether it's just telling their mama at Thanksgiving dinner or beyond about what they've read. And so I think that when I'm talking to publicists or intrigued by what is being pitched, it's giving me an action item to then offer to my readers. It's giving me an impact that I can then impart on others. And then, at like little tiny things, and I've said this on other panels before, that I think really are important to journalists and editors in particular when getting stories pitched, is like how it is pitched. Obviously, an excitement and enthusiasm behind what you're pitching, but how clean it is. Are these names spelled correctly? Is this link going to get me to the right place? Is this for me, particularly as a print editor, is some of this an AP style? Because can I just pull this and put it on here directly and attribute this person directly without spending 2 hours of my day to make this printable? Those things are really important as well. And so, obviously the passion and behind the work, understanding the impact and being able to clearly articulate that to the journalist that you're working with or the editor you're working with, and finally having clean, consistent work. It's so important because the collaboration, I think, is so beautiful and should show, I think, from both sides when the work is great.
I feel like that's the biggest compliment, when a media outlet takes your press release and just publishes it. I'm like, did that just happen? Like, at first I didn't know how to respond to that. So I want to go speak to my publicists, Aaliyah and Deja. I kind of want to segue into working with, now we're talking about the National Cherry Blossom Festival, right? And then we have the Baltimore Sun and those big publications. But how important is it for you to also acknowledge and work with smaller media publications? What is your relationship with smaller media publications that are maybe super hyper local, whether it's just they focus on a neighborhood, or a small particular demographic or community, or maybe a city? So how important has that been in your work that you do?
I can take that. So I experienced this on two different, ends of the spectrum. So with more of my our entrepreneurial, like focused small business type clients, like niche publications are so important. I don't even like calling them smaller publications. I like to use the term niche because their engagement tends to be a lot better, because a lot of times like they're like really specific, right? So whether it's like, location, or they just really like cover a specific area only, I think that sometimes can be really good in terms of engagement. So I always encourage in our pitching strategy at my PR firm, just a broad approach in terms of the different types of media outlets. Everything is not going to be an Essence or an Ebony or Forbes or whatever. But we really try to focus on what the quality of those like more niche publications, but then like also working and doing PR on like a larger brand side, actually, especially more so. Some of my work has been in the social impact space. And one initiative in particular, they only wanted to focus on those hyper local community type publications because they wanted that buy-in of a more like long-term relationship, because this was an initiative that was more so like over a span of time, right? So they didn't want to just only be like in the bigger publications, which this brand has been in a lot of them, but they wanted to be intentional in terms of working with journalists who are, or publications that are local to that area and care about those specific issues. So I think depending on what the strategy is, I think it's really important to consider those types of outlets as well too, and not just like gloss over them because they're not like, you know, they don't have a ton of like circulation or et cetera. But I think it's good to have a variety.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Deja has said. And, you know, our firm has worked with the biggest of the big, you know, in terms of artists and actors and things like that, and brands, and also emerging artists, emerging personalities. And I think it's really important to focus on both niche media and also, you know, the regional and local media. For new artists, it's especially important that you service those media outlets and pay attention to them and cater to them, because sometimes they're the only outlets that are going to show you love and cover, you know, cover your story. And then also that media can be used as a building block to the next step. And that's important, because before you can get to, like Deja said, in Essence or Good Morning America, those outlets and those reporters are going to want to see, and those producers, what you've done thus far. And you're going to want to have that, you know, traction out there in the atmosphere already. And then for big artists, it's important to always, you know, remember where you came from, and, you know, pay homage and, you know, give back, because these are people who may have supported you at the start of your career, and you don't want any backlash. You always want to make sure that they feel included, and, you know, your really grassroots fans or your grassroots customers see that love and see that appreciation. And then also from the standpoint of being a Black owned company and a female owned company, you always want to make sure that underserved communities are given attention, you know, or shown love, because sometimes we know that Black media doesn't get the same amount of love as other media. We know that, you know, niche publications don't always get the same amount of love, and they deserve it, because they contribute as well, and they contribute to the success of these individuals and these companies and these brands. So they should be given the same respect. So it's always important to me and to our company to be intentional about that, and to make sure that we are taking a comprehensive approach. And also, like Deja said, it's important to pay attention to these regional media outlets, these local media outlets, and there's ways to incorporate that, even, you know, with a big artist or actress. You know, you might give a story to the local television station or to the local paper, just to make sure you keep that connection between them and where they come from.
Exactly. So when it comes to pitching, whether it's a niche or national or global media outlet, what have you had to learn and unlearn? I give that to Deja Monet or to Aaliyah, but then also I want to hear from Takia and Misha as well on the type of pitches that you probably get that you want us as publicists maybe to stop doing, or the type of pitches that you want to stop coming in. So whoever would like to kind of take that first.
I think also, so in terms of what I've had to unlearn and relearn around pitching to the media, every client is different. Like, yes, I'm not talking about like more so like the process to like, you know, writing a pitch, but really having that flexibility to pivot based on what that client's goals are. I think if I'm looking back at from the beginning of my career to like now, like my strategy is a lot different, because like, as you know, also the media cycle has changed a lot too. So that has like, of course, caused me to like rethink about, you know, kind of how like we can break through that noise, which I feel like has certainly been more challenging as like we're going, not that we're over COVID, but like in this like new reality, right? So I think that's definitely like just learning like different methods, like figuring out, you know, coming up with, you know, interesting news hooks, like, you know, a subject line, like what are things that are going to get that journalist's attention. So I've always had to learn to like not be stuck in my ways, but also be committed to my development. So always like thinking of different ways to come up with different ideas, how to approach things differently, because I think creativity is definitely essential in this piece, but also studying the person that you're pitching, studying the outlet that you're pitching, and really like catering your pitches to them. And so for me, just to sum it up, I think really just like being willing to go back to the drawing board again and again to, improve or, re-strategize so that I'm being as effective as possible with my pitching.
Yeah, as a publicist, it's definitely not a place to be very proud, right? You really have to take a very humble approach to the work that you're. Aaliyah, did you want to tackle that question as well?
Well, yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to make sure you do your research and to understand, what that publication or what that media outlet, what type of stories they cover. And then, like Misha said earlier, you want to make sure that you have a strong pitch and it's personal and it's specific and it matches whatever media outlet you're pitching. And, you have to do your due diligence and understand the different outlets and what kind of stories they provide. And then I think you do have to humble yourself and not take things personally, not take the rejection, not take, maybe a lack of responsiveness personally. It's important to follow up. And I understand this, and this is what I tell young publicists, like, don't expect for a journalist that is getting hundreds, if not thousands of pitches just to get back to you just the first time you reach out, or if you don't have an established relationship with this person. You have to follow up, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then it's kind of on the flip side too, there are times when, we're pitching journalists and they're not interested in a particular story, and you don't take it personal because, down the road, they'll be reaching out to you for a particular client, or they may have a tough request because it might be around a sensitive issue that's going on or something that's in the news cycle, and they're reaching out to you and they're in the same position that you have been, so it's definitely, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So that's why it's just good to just cultivate relationships, be polite, add value to people where you can, at least get back to people. And that's what I try to do, and I really appreciate when journalists get back to me, even if it's a pass, because I like to get back to people as well. If it's something that can't happen or, it's not going to happen, just get back to them so they can move on. And I think people appreciate that. So that's all a part of, relationship building and maintaining good relationships too.
Exactly.
Well, I'll just say from my perspective, I absolutely love the interactions that I have with publicists from a journalism perspective. When I first started journalism and wrote my first stories, and my email or Twitter handle was underneath it, I just thought that's what it was. And I started getting emails initially from these people I'd never met or heard of. And, it was just such an I guess, interesting experience in the beginning, because it was a whole part of networking or relationship building that I had never done before. But what I have, now, and for many people, for journalists tuning in, I think you'd agree with me, it can get overwhelming, particularly in the very beginning. I'm like, what is happening? Who are these people? How do I decipher what is newsworthy? Everything seems newsworthy, and I know I don't have the bandwidth to do all these stories. But what I think has been really key for me in sort of this relationship building is, one, as Aaliyah and Deja both said, doing your research. I think it, whatever I get from a publicist, and I know that they've watched this live that I did, just it adds okay, well, they know if they've seen my stuff, then they know that their client will work for this. Or I think that this will really work well for your column. Just adds another, first of all, it allows me to think a little less harder about what I'm doing, right? And a little bit more efficiently on how I can tell this story about this individual or organization. But that personal touch also allows me to know that you really want me to tell this story because you think that how I am a storyteller will add value to your client. And I think that that really is important. And it just sort of adds that personal touch. And then, I now, and, from years of doing it, that personal side is so incredibly important. And so I encourage publicists, after you've worked with the person, to not be afraid to find them on social media, right? To not be afraid to give them a call. And that follow-up is also key, because as Aaliyah said, generally, and I feel so bad because, it's generally people whose emails I don't see until like weeks later. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have loved that. Or, oh my goodness, I hope that they don't hate me. But that follow-up is key. And so a phone call really can help sometimes, right? Because it's like, I never saw that. And so now you have me on the phone. I'm going to check my email and find it and have that conversation. Lawanda and I are birthday twins, and we know that because we're Instagram friends, And so just having that little personal touch, I think, allows for me as a reporter to do justice, a little bit more justice. And of course, that's our goal always, right? But because we know the person representing them, there's a lot riding on it, right? And so we want to do justice to these stories. We want to get these stories out, or if we can't do it ourselves, get it to the person who can get these stories out and for the world to know. And, and again, I will just harp on this always. Again, clean pitches are always great. Clean copy is always incredibly important. But yeah, I think following up, having that personal touch, and having really strong pitches will always allow for you to build great relationships with journalists. And, I think that is something from my side I had to learn really quickly, and it has proven the case for almost a decade.
Absolutely. Kia, do you want to touch on that? And I'm going to.
Yeah, just really quickly, I would say, first off, everything that you all just said is the exact same thing I'm over here shaking my head for when it comes to sponsorship. Oh my goodness. But one thing I would say that still, I don't want to use the word annoys, but that still gets me all the time is when I'm working with publicists. The problem that I have is that either they think too small, or they're still working in old school terms, meaning, now I always say, if anyone follows me, I always say pitching to the media is not the same as pitching to a brand. It's totally different, right? However, you can use a lot of those same techniques, such as making sure you do your research. I see it all the time where publicists will go and do research for days for a news to get a story pitched out there. But when you're trying to pitch your client to a brand, or if you're doing an event and you just happen to want to get a sponsor for that particular event, you don't do your research on the brand. Like some of the same rules that apply in PR world, it really does apply in the branding, in the sponsorship, connecting with brands and stuff like that world as well. It's the same thing when reaching out to media sponsors. I think a lot of publicists is like, look, I don't do sales, so I'm not going to reach out to sponsors. That's cool. However, have you ever thought about reaching out to a publication to being a sponsor, right? And the things that you can get out of that, and the stories that you can get out of that, because that also minimizes your pitch time to getting stories. Because if you get a media sponsor, they are automatically running stories. They're automatically running things about your particular client or event or whatever it is. So I get it. Some publicists is like, you know what, kid, I don't do sponsorship. That ain't my ministry. Got it. However, what if you got a media sponsor that can come in and bring a journalist to cover your event, cover your client, what your client is doing within the community, even if it's long term or short term. They do it all the time. We get it. I know we are part of a larger organization, but media sponsors are usually a trade. So if you give them something, they'll give you something, but it just has to make sense. But it only makes sense if you do your research. So everything that you guys have said, plus I can't stress research enough. If anybody knows me, if you don't research, don't come talk to me. It's hard. It's hard to even work with that.
I hear that. I hear that. And I want to be mindful of the time, but there is something I really wanted to touch on really quick, which was cancel culture. Cancel culture, cancel culture. I do not want to leave this conversation without talking about that. So it has to happen. So from, Kanye West to Dave Chappelle, to Gucci, J.K. Rowling, there's been, a parade around cancel culture around these folks. So cancel culture or call out culture has become very popular, especially with the uptick of social media platforms. The New York Post describes it as the phenomenon of promoting the canceling of people, brands, and even shows and movies due to what some consider to be offensive or problematic remarks or ideologies. So I want to ask you guys, how do you feel about participating in this movement? Either as a publicist, let's say, if your client believes they want to speak out about something because they believe that if I speak out about what Kanye West is doing or what have you, that could rein in success for me, and or have you or one of your clients maybe been canceled based on something that has been said.
Well,
Takia's face, and I wanted Takia has a very strong opinion on this, but go for it.
I'm not a fan of cancel culture at all. I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I think because number one, cancel culture it can be kind of arbitrary, I think, as we can see. And I mean, when I say arbitrary, it means that there are people that get canceled for certain things, and there are people that have done the same, similar, or even worse things, and they're not canceled. I believe in accountability, and I believe in consequences. And for individuals, for companies, for brands, I think if you do something that is wrong, if you do something that is incorrect, if you do something that is harmful, professionally or personally, you should be held accountable, and you should experience consequences. But I also believe in the idea that people should be allowed, that people can be redeemed, and there should be some redemption. I don't necessarily believe that people should lose careers or, their sources of income or ways to support themselves, or, their families. And I think this may happen kind of disproportionately with public figures. But, in the private sector, we know that people make all sorts of mistakes personally and professionally. They get in trouble with the law. They have family issues, but then in many cases, they're allowed to redeem themselves, pay whatever debt to society, and still have, some sort of livelihood or rebuild their lives. I think with public figures, in most cases, the same things should be able to happen where people aren't ruined for life. I think that is really, weighs really heavily on people's mental health, the idea. And now, because things are so open, we do have to be more careful about what we do and say publicly, because we are under more scrutiny. And of course, people have to be mindful of that, and they should be mindful of that. And again, like I said, I believe in accountability, but I'm not really big on the idea of canceling somebody forever and always and locking them away in a closet somewhere, never to be seen again, even if we don't like them, because we always have the choice. We can choose to support somebody or not support them, support their business or their products or not support them. But if we don't like it, yeah, don't support that individual person, but that doesn't mean that nobody else should, you know, and I'll leave it there.
Okay. And I'll just hop over to Takia, and I already got the warning that we're coming up on time. So Takia, I'll let you have the last say in this. Get your opinion.
I'm gonna be try my best to be as short as possible. So I've seen both ends, right? It all depends on I've seen it this way. I've seen brands still connect with people even when they're in that motion of being canceled, right? Now, listen, Kanye West is a totally different person, right? So we can't even, yes, brands were correct for dropping out. So I've seen brands drop out, but I've also seen brands say, you know what, we're gonna stand beside you. And that comes off when there's like CEOs that really agree with a lot of these influencers and personalities, when they agree with them on the closed door side, a lot of them will still keep a client on. A lot of them will, in a sense, support them and be with them side by side. So I've seen it on both ends. So my thing is, if your client want to speak out about Kanye West, I would be like, look, hold on. I wouldn't say nothing about it, because if I don't care if you're gonna go viral about it or not, you have to think about, for me, what brands you want to connect with, and then how much money you want to get from these brands. Because if you want to say something or not, social media is forever, internet is forever. They look at that, right? They look at, okay, if you say something good or bad or indifferent, I don't know if I want to partner with you on that, right? That's one. Two, there are some brands that if you are in the cancel culture and you don't, depending on what you've said or did, if it's not too bad, if it looks like it's being swept under the rug, a lot of brands will continue to pour into your brand. They will even build a whole campaign behind it. I'm in a situation now, not for this company, but for someone else, that they did something that was breaching their contract, and the brand personally is like, we know you're breaching your contract, but guess what, we're going to build a campaign that supports what you're saying, because we support it as well, and then we're going to fix the contract that you breach. It gets real sticky. Like it gets sticky, it gets ridiculous, and it all goes back into relationships. It goes back into who you know, and all the legal team that goes behind it that could clean up stuff. So even though I'm not a fan of the cancel culture, however, sometimes it's like that's the time where I sometimes may get most of my money, because I get a percentage off the endorsement deals that I get. So sometimes I'm like, have your client go out there and act a little crazy, because trust and believe, I could find a brand that got a lot of money that's like, you know what, we're going to support this person, even if it's for a short amount of time, because it's all about, like, if this is going to get a lot of media attention, good or bad. Now, again, I'm not a fan of, all media is good media. I'm not a fan of that. But from a brand standpoint, some brands are like, you know what, this is what we believe as well, so we'll rally behind it, and we'll clean up the mess later. So it can work. I promise you, it can work both ways.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just want to piggyback off of something Takia said. Like, you have to be careful taking a stance against a person publicly, especially if you're not a bigger, well-loved brand, because there may be companies that publicly admonish people or step away, from people, will distance themselves from people from controversial things or statements, but they're still friends with that person. They still admire that person privately, and they still have loyalty. They'll do it because they'll say, we have to distance ourselves from you because of X, Y, and Z. But if you're a younger artist or a younger actress and you take a stance or an opinion against this person and do that publicly and add to, all the criticism, then there are brands and companies that won't want to mess with you, because they, behind closed doors, they still have a loyalty and friendships with that person that's in the fire right now. So
it's a money thing.
Choosing sides.
You got to be careful about you, because it's a money thing. All day a money thing.
All right, Misha.
And I just wanted to
Yes.
to briefly say from a media outlet perspective regarding cancel culture, and I completely understand the sticky nature of it from a public relations side, but from the irony rather around cancel culture from a media outlet perspective is that while so many people are yelling cancel this person, media is talking about it 24/7, talking about the fact that this person is trying, or organizations and groups are trying to cancel these people or organizations. And so I feel like though it can be very sticky, if you have an individual client that you really feel confident that they're able to speak out on a subject from a perspective that might not necessarily be taking a stance, but adding insight, to go ahead and pitch them to the media outlets, because we have to fill these blocks, we have to fill this space, we have to fill these time slots, and it's being talked about anyway. And so if you can confidently do so, sort of without endangering your client's career as well as your own, I say go for it, because there are so many times where we're looking for that professor who just wrote a book about Black Wall Street or what have you, and now somebody's being canceled. And so talking about the financial impact of this artist or whatever might be, really good to their brand without it endangering who they are, and or making it look like they're taking a stance, and endangering your brand and look like you're taking a stance.
Absolutely. And I want to put a comment in it there. And I feel like there needs to be a part 2 to this conversation, because there's truly so much to say. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me and being a part of this conversation. This was breaking into the 24-hour media cycle. If you could say your social media, and then we will close out.
Awesome. I can go. Thank you, Lawanda, for having me. I think it was a great conversation. I will go back and connect with all of you ladies on at least LinkedIn. So I think it was a great conversation, and I love being in spaces too where I'm learning stuff. So I was just typing out notes, because there's always something new that you can learn. So I love that. But my Instagram is at I am Deja Monet, and I can put it in the chat too. But that's my Instagram my social media account across all platforms.
I'll jump in. Thank you again, Lawanda, and everyone for your time today. Lawanda, this conference is just so incredibly genius, and so congratulations to you for launching CommGenius and for getting these amazing panels together and these awesome groups of people. My social media, my Twitter is at Misha P. Green, MICHA P. Green, like the color, as well as my LinkedIn is Misha P. Green. And my Instagram is Mimi, MIMI Green. Feel free to follow me on all platforms. I have updates about my stories, things that I'm up to all the time. And I look forward to connecting with you all.
I'll go. Thank you for having me. On LinkedIn, you can find me on Takia Dickens. On social media, in reference to Instagram, you can follow me on Lady T _ the connector. I'll be getting back into my sponsorship coaching soon once the festival is over. So you could definitely reach out to me if you have any questions.
Okay, I'll go. Thank you so much, Lawanda, for a great conversation, for moderating this conversation. And thank you to CommGenius for hosting this conference. It's, much needed, much appreciated. And thank you, ladies, for all of your, very informative and, helpful and stimulating insights. I appreciate all of you. Everyone, I am on LinkedIn and Twitter as Aaliyah Crawford, ALIYA, no H, Crawford. And then I'm on also on TikTok, Aaliyah Crawford. Can't forget about TikTok. And then Instagram Aaliyah Crawford _ would love to connect with everyone, and I'll head over. I know there's a note to head over to the hospitality suite to share contacts as well. So I'll do that. But yeah, let's connect, let's stay in touch, let's help each other where we can and collaborate where we can. We're stronger together.
Awesome. And I am LaWanda White, the founder of CommGenius, and you can find me at La the Power Publicist on Instagram, LaWanda White on LinkedIn. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.
Good night. Have a great one, everyone.
Take care.